request. I don't know if this is going to go down well or not, but I kind of want you to sit down because I have really pretty slides, and if you don't see them, I'm going to be really disappointed. So anyone who's willing to sit down because you're kind of tired, you want to see my pretty slide. Oh my God, you guys are amazing. Ah, this is brilliant. You are the best. Incredible. It will make my, now I feel like the slides are not going to be as good as this commitment that you've given us. But great, amazing. Now this makes it kind of more scary. But okay, let's go. So I'm going to talk to you about cities, climate, and equality. These are the three things that I'm not working on at Zinc. But I love to bits. I've done 15 years of this. So hopefully you know a little bit about all of them, but maybe a little bit more. So 2% of the landmass, but 60% of the population live in urban areas. And that's expected to grow to 70% by 2050. But 1 in 4 people in urban areas are either living in slums or informal settlements. And we don't even have to go that extreme or that far. Just in Glasgow, down the road from our own kind of home country, the disparity between life expectancy from one side of the road to the other can be as extreme as 15 to 20 years. So we're dealing with deep, deep inequalities in cities. And when it comes to climate, 70% of the emissions come from cities. That's everything from transportation, buildings, energy. 70% of global energy consumption is consumed by cities. So quite a lot happens, but also at the same time, mayors and city officials have an enormous amount of power and influence to be able to change. They influence the transportation sector, the waste sector, sometimes the food sector, and procurement around those areas. So they can really be a critical voice and are increasingly a critical voice in that transition. Cities are also where we live, we play, we work. It's where 80% of the GDP is, but it's also where we're seeing the most extreme climate threats. So that's flooding, that's climate migration. And unfortunately, it's not treating us all equally. Climate change is deeply, deeply unfair. Women, children, elderly, people of color are very often at the very front lines of the climate impacts that we're feeling today. But our response can't be like that, and we've got it wrong so many times before. We can't afford to do that again. This is, for any urbanists in the room, is an image from 16 years ago from Sao Paulo in Brazil, and it really shows you the inequality that we've sort of designed into the cities that we are living in today. And if we're not careful, we'll fix one crisis, which is the climate crisis, and we'll create another one in the making. So I want to just take you a little bit back to my sort of old urban days. We designed our way into this mess that we're in. We wanted to segregate people based on class, and we created what we now know as urban suburbia. We wanted to live in these tiny little houses that we have our own cars and we have our own houses, and that gave us parking lots and a lot of cars and took away a lot of public space from us. And the spaces that we really appreciate, and hopefully as dwellers of cities, you want more of. None of us really want this in our back doors. It gave us also public health issues, and again, we have air pollution as a result of the fact that we lived in suburbia, then we got into cars, then we now have air pollution. But also, again, air pollution doesn't affect all of us equally. Children, women, and those of us with underlying health issues end up having to bear the cost of that more significantly. But I really, as a designer, as a former architect, I believe that if we designed our way in, we can design our way out. And I do think that technologically, we know what we need to do. We know how to transition the transport sector, the retrofits that need to take place, how to stop all the waste that's going into our oceans, yada, yada, yada. But what makes it really complicated is that infrastructure cycles are typically 10 to 15 years, mayoral cycles are 3 to 5 years, and that really creates a mess. Those misalignments don't lend themselves well for us to be able to do this adequately. And even more importantly, very often we've treated this whole equation as if it was a scientific problem that we needed to solve, that it didn't require people and society as part of it, and we've not designed for people. And people are at the very, very heart of this transition. About 2017, when I actually joined C40, a group of mayors had come together. We used to be a very climate-focused organization, and a group of our mayors came together and said, we're losing our permission to act on climate if we're not able to simultaneously address socioeconomic issues that are happening just on our doorstep. That's education, that's health, that's all the issues that are day-to-day citizens, the cost of living crisis in the UK, those are the very pressing issues. And if we can't meet those two things at the same time, we will lose our permission to act. And that wasn't just a myth. In South Africa, the energy transition was causing a lot of fear around job losses for many, many, many people. In the US, urban nature projects were being stopped because of fear of gentrification and cost of housing going up. In Paris, in Rennes, they tried to stop, or they have now, to try to pedestrianize a really big part of the river. And again, some of the local shopkeepers took the city to court at the fear of reduced economic productivity. And just, again, in our hometown in the UK, people were very opposed to the low emission zone, despite the fact that it will clean our air, it will make public health better for all of us. And what fundamentally at the very heart of this, whether we agree or not, is a demand for a just transition. It's like we want this planet to get better, we want it to be a livable place for us all to live in, but we want it to also be done in such a way that we can meet all the other needs that we have. So with all that semi-depressing stuff, there is some light at the end of the tunnel. It was about 6-7 years ago, at least, that our mayors came together to try and really, really address this at the forefront of it. One of my favorite mayors, the mayor of Quezon City, has set up a 36-person department just dedicated to equity and inclusion within climate in the Philippines. So it is possible, and they're really taking this seriously. This is one of my projects. I'm super proud of it. Bogota has this incredible mayor. If you ever get to look at, like, now, as in the new mayor is also nice, but the previous mayor, who was a female mayor, was fantastic. She wanted to have a bike lane or increase the bike share schemes across the city, but we soon realized that that was really going to exclude people with disabilities, women who wanted to use that as a form of transit to take their kids to school. So out of the 3,000 bikes that were implemented in Bogota, 150 of them are made for people with disabilities, 300 of them specifically designed for women. And I think it's an example of where we can transition, but really put people and their needs at the very heart of this, and not just the people that are designing it, the people that are actually going to use it. And Barcelona, again, if there's any urbanists in the room, you might smile at this, but Barcelona has a grid structure in their city. And one of the things they did, this architect about sort of 15 years ago came up with the idea of a super block. So they said, okay, let's take a bunch of blocks together. Let's take out all the roads in between, and then we will make all of the stuff in between only pedestrian and for bikes, and then everything on the outside can be for cars, and that will contribute towards our sort of carbon emission reductions and air quality and yada yada. And then we realized that actually climate is not just about decarbonization, it's also about adaptation, and people were dying over the summer from heat stress, extreme heat stress in Barcelona, and during COVID it was a whole other spiel. So what they've done is they've overlaid on top of the mobility super blocks a social super block. So for each of these blocks there is a dedicated community member that goes and checks in on people during times of heat stress to make sure that they're okay, and they're really trying to deal with the adaptation that is so necessary and so today's problem that people have. Many cities are taking this on and actually trying to essentially design cities around this concept of 15-minute city so that we have everything that we need within our vicinity. So I guess what I really want to leave you guys with is we have to be incredibly intentional about the way in which we design stuff. We're probably in this room a bunch of policymakers, founders, engineers, people that have different skill sets. But we have to make sure that the processes in which that we're designing cities and our policies are inclusive, we're engaging, we're going beyond the usual suspects. We cannot go to the same people we've always spoken to. We have all these partnerships with unions, with informal dwellers. We have to listen to them. we also have to actually be really intentional about the policy that we're designing and the impact that has. Like I see all these numbers kind of being churned out about, okay, this particular program or this particular piece of infrastructure is creating X number of jobs. Jobs for whom? Who are we creating these jobs for? Are they going to the same people who are losing those jobs, or are we creating those jobs in a just way that people actually need? So I want to leave you with those two anecdotes: design with people, design intention. Thank you for sitting down. Gosh, you're so